Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Jeff Williams with Creekstone Integrated Care right here in beautiful Amarillo, Texas. And I'm coming to you this week with yet another video. This one is called, Do I Need to Go to the Chiropractor 3 times per week? Now, I think it's important to begin by saying the chiropractic profession, unfortunately, is not very well standardized. For example, if you have an ear infection in, say, Dallas or Portland, New York City, or Davenport, Iowa, basically anywhere, if you have an ear infection, pretty much anywhere you go, you have a good idea of what kind of treatment you're going to get before you even go in. The medical field, while still having outliers in their system, is fairly well standardized. They mostly follow protocols and guidelines that are put forth with the expectations that they're going to be followed for the best patient care, the safest patient care, and the best patient outcomes. The chiropractic field has guidelines, and we've got best recommendations that are put forth based on research and the best current evidence as well. We've got all that stuff. However, by and large, it seems to me to pretty much be up to the individual practitioner as to whether they are going to follow them or not. And it's been my experience after over 2 decades in this profession that it's not very well standardized or very well governed as far as the day-to-day processes of a chiropractor. It's not very well governed unless some sort of complaint is made by a patient, and then they'll hammer the chiropractor. But otherwise, it's kind of the Wild West. They do whatever they want. And for this reason, we really have 3 factions, for lack of a better word, with 3 camps or factions in this profession. Now, I've discussed these several times in past videos, but briefly, they are, in my admittedly extremely biased view, they are as follows. The first group is evidence-based, patient-centered. Now, this is the camp that we fit into here at Creekstone. I am a self-professed research nerd, and I mean that in every good sense of the term. Evidence-based, patient-centered means that the doctor uses the latest, most current research to formulate their thinking, to update their thinking, to formulate their diagnosis and their treatment and their protocols, how they handle patients day to day. Now, this type of doctor will forego protocols that will make them in the clinic much more money, but is not always necessarily in the best interest of the patient or the patient's pocketbook. Sometimes you can do a treatment on somebody, but it's probably not going to help them much. So, according to research. So, we don't do them. If it's not going to help that much and it just costs them money, yeah, we could make more money, but it's not in the best interest of the patient, so we don't do it. Basically, what we do is what research says should be helpful and aid the patient in becoming able to self-manage their complaint at home without depending on seeing a chiropractor for multiple visits for the rest of their lives. That, to me, is the essence of patient-centered care. Now, the second group of chiropractors, or the second faction, is called agnostic. It's what I call it. I made the term up. These chiropractors received an excellent education from chiropractic school, and now they're simply going about their day-to-day business, just treating patients without much concern about research, updating their knowledge on guidelines or anything of that sort. They're basically in the middle, and they don't really care much about furthering their understanding or the research or the philosophy side of things, for that matter. They're just kind of there. They're surviving. They're doing their day-to-day. That does not make them less than as far as how good they are. Some are better than others for sure, though, as you might imagine. Now, the third and final camp or faction we'll talk about, I call the subluxation or philosophy group. And I make no friends in my profession by discussing these things. It's a bit uncomfortable for me, if I'm being honest, because some of my good friends fit in this camp, and some people I highly respect on a personal level fit in this camp. But if I'm to contribute to the public's understanding and better my profession for future generations in the process, then it's my opinion that talking about it is necessary. Subluxation philosophy chiropractors still maintain and believe in the ideas that the profession was built on or invented around more than 120 years ago by the profession's founder. Now, regardless of the lack of research over those 120 years that support these claims, the belief in the founding principles, for some, still remains. The belief is that continuously removing subluxations from the spine frees the nerves to operate with their full potential. This, to them, means that the patient will never have disease, does not require any vaccinations since they'll never get sick anyways, and should remain pain-free as long as they're subluxation-free. If a patient visits a chiropractor approximately once per week or for however long, for eternity, they should stay just as healthy as humanly possible. Now, these folks are not necessarily trying to be doctor-centered, but when the clinic makes money hand over fist and the recommendations they make are contrary to the most widely accepted guidelines and recommendations in the industry for best patient care, well, I suppose patients can decide what they think is best for themselves as long as they're educated on the differences. So we'll just leave it there. The reason for covering these three groups is because each group will likely provide different recommendations for your treatment schedule. And that speaks directly to whether you really need to go to a chiropractor 3 times per week or not. While I can't say exactly what a chiropractor in the middle, or the agnostics, would recommend as far as their treatment schedules go, I have a very good idea of what evidence-based chiropractors and subluxation-based chiropractors typically recommend. I believe that most evidence-based chiropractors would agree that regardless of whether it is a chronic or acute pain, meaning no matter how long the pain has been around, an initial trial period of 3 times per week for 2 weeks is appropriate, and it makes good sense. Think about it for just a sec. The pain is most typically musculoskeletal pain. Anything based around the musculoskeletal system, it just takes time to change. That makes sense. If you sign up and start going to the gym, any work you put in, it's going to take at least 2 weeks to begin showing signs of change. If you go to a physical therapist, you're most certainly going to get recommendations for multiple visits per week for several weeks. Usually much longer treatment schedule than just 2 weeks, and typically at much more expense per visit, trust me. Now, for these reasons, a short initial treatment plan is more than responsible, very appropriate, and very much within common best practice guidelines. After the initial 2 weeks, if the patient is feeling great and they've improved significantly, which is usually the case, then it's appropriate at that time to reduce the frequency to 2 visits per week for a week, maybe 2, and then reduce it further to once per week for a week, maybe 2, before finally releasing the patient to self-manage any further flare-ups at home on their own. If the patient has chronic, long-standing, long-lasting pain, well, treatment may be more lengthy and a bit more involved. And in fact, if it's what they call high-impact chronic pain, well, that patient might see you periodically for their entire life to help control and manage that pain. But outside of that very specific case, it should have a start, it should have an end, and go that direction. Now, most patients respond very favorably to this sort of recommendation, the 3 times a week for a couple of weeks, the trial period, and then step it down as the patient's feeling better. And I typically tell patients that basically, the better they're feeling, the less I want to see them. I tell them that I make recommendations to them that I would make to my own family members. When we go about business treating patients as we would treat our brother or mother, well, everything else, including finances, it just sort of kind of takes care of itself, doesn't it? When you treat people right. So it's been my experience that the subluxation-based chiropractors typically make very long-term recommendations, multiple visits over a long period of time. For example, they tend to, some of them, not all of them, but some of them place a very high value on whether a patient has a decreased curvature on their neck x-ray. They believe this puts a patient at great risk of developing major issues as they age. But, I'm a research nerd, long-lasting research that was done over a 20-year period, is well-done research, suggests a decrease in neck curvature has little, if any, impact on a patient over the years. Yet, you commonly see cases in which some of these chiropractors recommend up to 70 or more visits, which cost upwards of $3,500 to $5,000 and more in treatment costs in less than a year. All of this in an attempt to correct this curvature issue. Some call their patients, instead of patients, they call them practice members. And they require them to, many times, sign treatment contracts and things of that sort. When the research says a decreased neck curvature probably just doesn't matter. And as for the contract, well, whoo-hoo. In my opinion, there is simply no place in healthcare where a contract is appropriate. It creates a barrier of sorts between the doctor and the patient, a sense of distrust, if you will. And it's just not something I would ever recommend a patient sign, and I would never offer a patient a contract. In fact, outside of personal injury, car wreck, legal paperwork to ensure that the practitioner is compensated at the end of the case, outside of that, I would recommend patients turn around and run as fast as they can if they're ever bullied into signing a contract or ever confronted with any kind of practitioner attempting to do that. Beyond the curvature issues, many subluxation-based chiropractors will commonly urge patients to visit them 2 to 4 times per month for the course of their lifetime. Now that would be 24 to 48 visits per year forever. And let me just say, there's no reputable research that I'm aware of backing up that kind of treatment schedule. And remember, I'm a research nerd, and I've been in the profession for over 2 decades. And for that reason, if it were there, the research, I would have probably come across it by now. There is a compelling argument to be made that many treatments of spinal manipulation over the course of a certain amount of time could potentially lead to spinal instability, which means it could do more harm than good. It is definitely something to consider when you're making your decisions about how often you want to go to a chiropractor. So what's the verdict on chiropractic care frequency? Basically, do you have to go to the chiropractor 3 times per week? Well, nobody can force you to do anything you don't want to do. You're the patient, and patient preference plays a big part in evidence-based care and best practices. However, if you have a complaint that you really want resolved, an initial trial treatment schedule of 3 times per week for 2 weeks is completely recommended, very appropriate, and very responsible. Beyond that, again, it's purely patient preference as to what you believe and what your chiropractor recommends. Hopefully, though, I've been able to give you some ideas on how you should be responsibly directed in an evidence-based, patient-centered manner. And I hope that clears up any questions you may have had in your mind on the matter. If you're watching this on YouTube, do me a favor. Click that subscribe button just below so that you'll know when we post new videos. If you're watching this on Facebook, hit the like button and then share it. If you thought it was interesting, chances are that one of your friends or family members will think it's interesting as well. Either way, we'd sure appreciate y'all helping us get the word out. Again, I'm Dr. Jeff Williams with Creekstone Integrated Care right here in Amarillo, Texas. If you're visiting in our area and you need to see me or already in this area, you can visit our website at creekstonecare.com to learn more, or just pick up that phone and call us at 806-355-3000. We'd love to do what we can to help you. Till next week, take care of each other.